So on a positive note, so I just wanted to kind of show that, you know, there have been, and I was told when I first started my work on the Sturgeon River that the Sturgeon River is the most researched and studied watershed in Alberta. Likely just because most of the government offices were here, and I think everybody went out and kind of did stuff in the Sturgeon River watershed. But we have tons of data, but nobody's ever put it together or aligned it or you know, cross-checked with each other. But these are some of the studies that have done that. So the Big Lake Basin Task Force did the Stormwater Plan in 2004. Of course, the 2005 State of the North Saskatchewan Watershed Report. I gave you a year ahead here. I didn't realize it was 2012, but the Integrated Watershed Plan that was also completed. And numerous other studies. Some of the other studies that, and again, I could probably go on and on about the number of studies, is City of St. Albert has been studying the water quality within the Sturgeon River for almost 10 years now. And we do it, we originally started with 4 locations. We came up with those locations with Alberta Environment because they did have some locations within St. Albert that they used to monitor. So again, I'm all about the data. So I want to make sure that if I'm going to take water quality samples, it's at a location that already was sampled previously, even if it was only 10 different samples. I want to make sure that there is some longevity to that information. So picked 4 sites. It has since grown to 10. The majority are now on our Carrot Creek. As it was mentioned earlier, tributaries tend to have a lot of issues, and it's totally true of our Carrot Creek. We've got some wonderful data in terms of the river itself. Our master plan, environmental master plan, actually says that one of our targets is that water quality coming into St. Albert is the same or better by the time it leaves. It's a big wish. We haven't got there yet. But for a lot of the parameters, there really is no change, which is the good news. But there definitely is increases in E. coli, in nutrients, and in some cases, some years, suspended solids. So very interesting data. We also do it for our stormwater ponds and our outfalls, which is a whole other presentation in itself. But if you're interested, you can just let me know. Nate had a building here in St. Albert for a couple of years. They have since moved out, but as soon as they moved in, we worked with them, Lori Hunt and Debbie Webb, thank you. And they said, we want to do research in St. Albert. And I'm like, we've got lots of water data in St. Albert. Can you go out into the watershed, please? Because that's where we don't have the information. So we worked with Nate and the students there to come up with locations across the watershed, again, trying to replicate Alberta environment sites. And they've done several years worth of water quality monitoring. Not as detailed in terms of the parameters as the city's able to do, but really, and some other great studies in terms of fish passage and road crossings, things like that. So they're awesome. And they've also done some public engagement, which is also very great. Other studies, I mean, we do have the city has a stormwater master plan, and one of the big things you'll notice on the Sturgeon River, if you've lived here very, very long, is at the outfalls we have a lot of sediment that's built up. So we actually have a program where we're going in and we're retrofitting some of our old stormwater pipes with grit interceptors, which are basically great big concrete boxes that take the water, slow it down so that the sediment falls out before it gets to the river. Of course, since about 2000, all of our land development has been required to have stormwater ponds, which act in a similar way. But this is for retrofits for some of our older areas. And the program is 10 years long, and it's $10 million. Again, which was a big step for our council. It's a lot of money. But we hear from our residents about what they think. They're concerned about the health of the river, so we're moving forward on this. There's 8 priority outfalls, and we've completed 4 of them. We're taking a break this year to reassess and move on. Again, whole slideshow itself on that. If you want any more information on that, you can come and talk to me. Now, outside St. Albert, there's some great stuff going on within the watershed. So Edmonton has an amazing natural areas studies and reports and policies in place. Amazing stuff, like really leading edge. So we're always peeking over the border and saying, what are they doing? Parkland, we just heard about the ELSIS program. Again, it's very leading edge, very new. Again, some stuff that we could learn from and maybe work for. Tons of lake work being done in the last couple of years, you know, whether it's Lake Waterman or the lakes in Parkland, lots of great stuff. And also environmentally sensitive areas. A lot of municipalities are doing work on that right now. So again, just a quick summary, 2012, we completed this report. Jay told you we managed to get a grade of fair, but there was a lot of data gaps. What the recommendations of the report were the following. So encourage and support research to address the data gaps. So whether this is with NATE, with the University of Alberta, or with a watershed group, we really need to fill in those data gaps, which is important. Promote sustainable urban development. Again, that fast growth rate. We need to really look at higher densities, improved transit, everything that Sharon was talking about this morning from the CRB. So, I mean, that's good news. They're really leading the way in that. Identify and prioritize environmentally sensitive areas in the watershed for protection. Again, Edmonton is doing an amazing job at this. Parkland just finished their environmental conservation report. Amazing information, really, really good. I think Lac St. Anne did some as well for their land use bylaw update. They did some work there. City of St. Albert is right now doing a detailed assessment of our natural areas and the connectivity and the biodiversity. So lots of great stuff going on there. And then also undertake a drained wetland inventory for future restoration projects. This was a real bugaboo, well, it is a bugaboo for a lot of municipalities here, because until recently, if you disturbed a wetland within the Sturgeon River Watershed, a developer or the proponent was able to compensate for that wetland loss, but none of it was being done within our watershed. It was being done outside our watershed. So we really, really, really want to identify areas within our watershed where we can benefit from those compensation dollars. Promote watershed education outreach programs. I mean, I think this is kind of a no-brainer. This is some fun stuff that Megan gets to do within the City of St. Albert. We have some really great programs. We have a Cleaning Green River Fest every year where we clean up along the river's edge. We also have tree planting where we replant riparian areas. We have a trade fair where lots of people come. And typically, how many participants do we get, Megan? About 400. And it's been pretty consistent since we've done it for, well, basically since Megan's been here. So it's a great program. Actually, we're having a complimentary one coming up this month called Parks Fest. We'll do a similar thing. If anybody wants to plant a tree this weekend, we'll be at the Grey Nuns White Spruce Forest at 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. in the morning, planting trees. We do a lot of these events, and we actually have $30,000 a year that we give out in environmental initiative grants to residents who want to do their own programs. And we also really try to collaborate regionally. In terms of education, why would you have one program in St. Albert that's different than the one in Edmonton that's different in Strathcona County? So there's a gang of us from the municipalities get together. I know Vanessa's here. Is anybody else here from your big gang? No? Okay. Vanessa's here from Strathcona County. We get together. One of the programs that we roll out that is very consistent across the board is called Good Growing Neighbors. It's about, you know, pesticide and fertilizer use for lawns. So I'm hoping also that regionally we'll be doing the Don't Let It Loose campaign, just in case people from Edmonton decide they want to come to St. Albert, have a picnic and drop their fish into our river. So, and this is where we're really getting to today. So the last recommendation was establish a municipal Sturgeon River watershed group in partnership with NSWA. So this was really one of the recommendations that I want to share with you. So in 2013, right after our report was done, Melissa and Dave and Billy and all the staff at NSWA were there. They're like, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to get started? So they've been very instrumental in helping us get this intermunicipal group together. It started out with presentations to each of the municipalities, letters sent out to them, and right now the active municipalities we have are Lac St. Anne, so Robert gave the introduction this morning, Parkland, Sturgeon County, the summer villages of Lac St. Anne County East, which is Bernie's here, Gibbons, Morinville, Onaway, Stony Plain, Edmonton, Spruce Grove, and St. Albert. So it's 11 groups. Now, this isn't the only municipalities that we have. We also have a group, which I think is very important, which we call the informed members. So not every municipality has the resources to send somebody to a group like this. but they still want to be informed of what we're doing. So we also have a long list of groups that are informed, and they're just as important to be in that partnership as those of us who are active. So the Alliance is really separated into two groups. So we have a steering committee and we have a technical advisory committee. So our steering committee is our elected officials, and they're appointed by their councils to be participating on this Alliance. We have 11 members of our steering committee. They meet quarterly, and they provide updates to their individual councils on how the work is going. The Technical Advisory Committee includes municipal staff, also NSWA people, provincial government, and am I missing anybody? Anybody who's technically like a provincial group, like ACA comes, you know, there's lots of us. Anybody who's got a techno bone in our body, we're there. So we meet almost monthly, and we are the ones who are really trying to move forward on these data gaps and synthesizing information. So what have we done so far? It's only been a very short amount of time, but we've done some really, really foundational work for this group. One of the first things we did was we sat down and we looked at each other and we said, well, what are you doing about the watershed? What are you doing about the watershed? Because every single one of us had projects related to watershed health that we needed to share and find out what everybody was doing. It was quite a long list, and there's lots of data and lots of ideas going on. We also we hired an outside consultant, a planning consultant, to provide us with a summary of existing watershed protection mechanisms that were in place within the watershed. So what do they have in Sturgeon County to protect riparian areas versus Lac St. Anne versus Edmonton? All these sort of things. So we could see what was actually in policy and bylaw that was being used. And then we were kind of looked through that and we said, wow, you're doing that? Why don't we do that? Because one of the keys to watershed management is that we all align. We should be following a similar rule. Just because, I love the quote, it says that you have to learn from the mistakes of others because you can't live long enough to make them all yourself. And that's really what we're doing, is we're trying to glean from everybody about what they've learned, what they've done, just so that each one of us doesn't have to go through the same experience. Another accomplishments, we've had a couple watershed tours that our steering committee has really enjoyed. So one of the things about education is it's not just for residents. I mean, it's for our councils, it's for us. I mean, there's portions of the watershed that I have never seen. So the more that we can get out and about and see different parts of it, learn what other people are doing, the better. We also put together a communications and advocacy plan. As elected officials, they're of course interested in what should I be asking from the provincial government, what should I be talking about, what are our key issues, that sort of thing. So we've tried to put something together for them to work with. We also did a lot of research on funding sources. So of course we can't afford to do millions of dollars worth of studies, so what's out there? And then we came up with a work plan and a list of prioritized projects. So I'm just going to go over some of those. So we came up with 3 key projects that we wanted to complete off the bat, and they are really to address the data gaps or critical issues, like timely issues that really need to be addressed. So the hydrological review, that is again about the water quantity. So Dave mentioned this morning, and it's much about license allocations, water flows, historic flows, that sort of thing. Water quality, again, for pockets of the watershed we have some good information, others we don't. So what information do we have, and what do we need to start collecting? And then lastly, we felt that a regional natural areas review was an important project. And the reason why is because there's been a lot of really great research that's been completed very recently on this by many municipalities. And if we can put that together in a regional-wide review, then we can have a much better idea about, what are the critical core areas that we need to protect? What are those areas that are really critical riparian areas that we need to restore? That sort of thing. So it's not just all of us kind of going about it piecemeal, it's looking at the watershed and saying, where are the key areas we really need to focus our time and energy? And that may mean that all the projects are done outside the city of St. Albert, but that's okay by me, because if I help projects that are critical within the watershed, they eventually will help us. So it's about taking that bigger picture view. So just a little bit of detail. So, I mean, the hydrological review, besides summarizing the existing data and trends over time, going to be looking at assessing the existing and future water demands, as well as looking a little bit at the in-stream flow needs. And there are some components of groundwater within this study. And then the water quality review, again, summarize data, trends over time, but also look at a model. So, I mean, if this is kind of the water quality at this point, what's going to happen as we increase to develop, and what's going to happen with the water quality over time. And then, of course, a quality index, so that we can translate, you know, these huge graphs with tons of data and say, okay, well, how is the river doing? So that we can look for and educate over time. And then lastly, the regional natural areas review, really looking at the environmentally sensitive areas, wetlands especially, and riparian areas. What are the core diversity areas? What are the key connectivity areas? What are the potential areas for wetland restoration? So we're really trying to build on the significant studies and progress in natural areas that have been done. This is something that municipalities can do very quickly. If we all put together something that says we need to protect our riparian areas, and this is how we're going to do it, and we all do it the same way, that's something that we can do as development occurs. It's something that we can do right away. And just to put in a plug for St. Albert, we recently bought our own drone, which I'm very excited about. It was bought by our economic development group, but I have first dibs in terms of getting some photos taken of the Sturgeon River and Carrot Creek. I think it's going to be lovely. But there's quite a process to go through to be licensed and trained, so that's going to be a while. But expect some really cool videos on our website soon. So really, what are our next steps? We have this great group together. We've prioritized our projects. We've got some projects we really, really want to do. And Dave mentioned this morning is that we have received $57,000 funding from the Environmental Damages Fund to do the water quality study, correct? Quantity. The quantity, sorry. 1 out of 2, and I picked the wrong one. We also applied for a community partnership grant from Alberta Municipal Affairs to do our regional natural areas work, but we didn't make the cut on that one, so we're anxiously waiting to see what the NDP government is going to do with that program and reapply again. And really, keep working together and moving forward. And as much as it's about these big projects, it's also about meeting every quarterly. So what's going on within your area? What are things that we can align now quickly that we don't need reports on? What are some of the quick wins that we can agree upon so that we can all be on the same page? One of the things that comes right to my mind right now is, as much as the wetland policy has kind of been reintroduced or whatever, we're actually meeting with the representatives from Alberta Environment and all of our municipalities in the capital region to go over what is the planning process that we have for wetlands. And Strathcona County has a great process. And so we're all getting together and saying, well, let's all copy Strathcona's process. and then it's consistent, which any of you who deal with developers is very, very important, because you have to have a key message, the same message to your developers. They can say fairly easily, well, they don't do that over there. But this way we can say, no, we're all doing it the same. It's all the same requirement. And Edmonton has really done some amazing work in this area and really setting the stage for some different ways that we might be able to protect and preserve wetlands as we develop. So keep posted on that. So I just wanted to end and say thank you so much. I really want to say that, coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is the success. And so the important part of all of this is that we have a great group now. Let's keep working together, let's keep moving it forward. And we need really, really to be patient. It's taken 150 years for our watershed to get like this. It is not going to change in a decade, or maybe even our lifetimes. We have to do it for the long term. 50 years is not a long time in the life of a river. 100 years is not a long time. So we really have to stick to it. We have to persevere, and we have to realize that, you know what, we may not see some really significant changes in everything that we want to deal with, but we'll see some. So let's celebrate those as we move along, and let's stick together so we can succeed together.